performance testing, the discussion can be started with the question like, what is the expected user load you are looking for? Like, or you can even ask like, so can I get a historical data or 1 year data so that I can start analyzing the things, what will be the expected user load for the application. So this is the way you have to ask the question. Oh, and what is your expected response time for a page? So suppose they tell like, they'll give a SLA. SLA is nothing but a service level agreement between a client and a performance tester, which needs to be met during the test. So, and next, what more question you have to ask? Like, what are the architectural components are involved, and what are the critical business and you have to identify the critical business flow after understanding, and what are the type of performance test can we include, and explain all the type of test and what will be their outcomes from this particular test, so that the client will be understanding and he can think about that, yeah, this and this test needs to be performed. Okay, so let's tell like I will also tell about the some additional tips. Like, also always try to have a good image with the customer and make him understand all the things, as he might not be an IT guy, and whatever doubts he asks you have to clear. And as during the meeting you need to educate the customer by explaining some core performance testing types, and why this particular test is needed, and you can even explain what are the outcomes, like how the particular application will be benefited, so that he can explain exactly what his expectations are. The most important thing which a performance lead should always avoid, not to scare the client by asking a lot of questions in one shot. Rather, you should make multiple meetings and make him understand, because if you try to confuse the client, he might be worried and he might be in confusion. So rather, discuss the agenda for the call, and discuss all the required question, whatever you wanted to ask. So I have discussed about the approach, given additional tips. Next, challenges. Okay, so normally it is a very challenging task for a performance tester to collect the matrices and make a client and educate the client. So, what all challenges will you face during this particular phase? So, this is the by far the toughest phase of performance testing, as you might not know the overall requirements, and it is a very specific terms or question. Then you have to conceptually convert that particular discussion to a quantitative document. Very difficult phase to collect the correct performance testing. If you forget any requirement, if you forget any particular requirement on this particular phase, then there will be a definite issue during the performance testing. After the when it goes to production, then you observe, then it comes to you, like again they will point to you that why haven't you collected, why haven't you collect all the details during this particular phase, and how come you have missed this detail. So it is very necessary to understand the application architecture and components to meet all the client's requirement and the various type of tests you need to perform. So in most of the cases, applications are new. Hence, performance lead do not have any clue on the NFR. Many times, client picks some random numbers over the call and asks to perform NFT. So against this number, and at the end of the test, when such NFRs do not meet, client forced to modify the NFRs and pass the test at any cost. So such performance tests are executed to showcase the performance testing, and the application performed very well in the test environment, but in reality in the production environment it might be a failure, and due to performance issue, again it will be a greater impact and it will even hamper the client's business. So we need to understand this particular requirements thoroughly and project and document all those stuffs, so that we perform all the various necessary requirements during the test. So coming to again deliverable. So after the completion of this phase, what are the things you need to deliver? So during the non-functional requirement, document has to draft once the scope is finalized. The outcome of each meeting may lead to multiple changes in the document. Non-functional requirement document should cover all the aspects along with major and minor changes in the requirement. Do not forget to mention the acceptable errors percentage in the document, because this is one of the criteria which will help to decide the status at the end of the testing. So let I've downloaded a NFR template. So let's see like what all the documents we need to understand, and what all things we need to give. So as I have already shown you the in the previous class our particular risk assessment document. So here you have to give the company name and what's the company logo, and NFR document template. This is the template version. So what is the particular version you are working on, and what is the particular date you have started, and the project name you have to give, and after that NFR requirement document sign up, like who is the key person. They need to go through this particular document and give a sign off if everything's are appropriate according to the NFRs. NFR during the whatever we have discussed, and we had a mutual agreement between the client and the tester. All things are projected and documented in this particular document, and they will go through this particular document and give you a sign off. So, what are the record of changes? Like after the multiple calls, what all the clients have expected you to make the changes? Then you need to do all the changes, and what is the version you had worked on? You have to mention this, and you have to mention the date as well. Provide information on how the development and distribution of the non-functional requirement document were carried out, and tracked with dates. Use the table below to provide the version number, the date of the version, the author, owner of the version, and a brief description of the reason for creating the revised version. So, what is the table of contents? NFR non-functional requirement document sign off, record of changes, which is nothing but how many times you have drafted and what all the times your client has asked you to change some of the things. So table of content, executive summary, you have to mention the project background and scope, application architecture, like overview of system architecture, architectural diagram to understand better about the components, performance test requirement. So requirement, business NFRs, what are the NFRs you have collected and documented separately for each and every requirement. Non-functional requirement, again other non-functional requirement, assumption, constraint, risk, dependency. So executive summary, you have to mention all the project summary and details in this particular call header. So again after that You need to understand the architecture and mention all those details what are involved in this particular test and what are the critical components you are going to perform the performance testing. And you have to mention even some details about the system architecture and attach a particular architectural diagram to know and navigate the flow, how the data is moving from which part to which. So again, requirement, business NFR. So let's take like there are in the business transaction, user load, SLA, transaction per hour. This is the thing. So for the business process one, user load is 100, SLA is 5 second, and you know, what is the TPH? So transaction per hour, it is 1452. It needs to achieve in an hour. So business process 2, same with 150 users, 2 second is the SLA and 1700. Again, like we have five business process. Okay, after analyzing the business NFRs, refine them and convert into qualitative NFR, which should be written down in the below table, like NFR 01 for the business process 1 is the performance user load and peak load. The system must be able to support 100 active users. Okay, NFR 2, business process 1. This is the next in this particular business process one only. This NFR 2 non-functional requirement 2 is also coming up. Performance responsiveness, like it should be considered this should be in the SLA in 5 seconds. The system response time on peak load for user request as identified in the figure shall be less than 5 seconds to for an individual request. So for an every request, the server should send the particular response within 5 second SLA. If more than 5 seconds, it will breach the NFRs and it will not meet the client's requirement. Again, how NFR 3, 4, 5 performance transaction rate. So again, coming to this rate, 1452 it needs to achieve in a particular 1 hour run. Again, for business process one NFR 4, it should CPU utilization must be less than 60% and memory utilization must not exceed more than 10%. So performance generic, the acceptable limit for the of the failed count is less than 3% of the total transaction during the test. Suppose let's consider uh, 10,000 transactions passed. That overall transaction is 10,000. So what will be the 3% of 10,000? So that is the maximum failure rate your client can client approves. So 10,000, so 300, maximum 300 transaction can be failed. If it is more than 3,000, then definitely it will breach this particular NFR as well. So again, what are different types of tests we need to achieve? So if you are performing any kind of stress test, then the system must be able to support 150% or 125% of the peak time active user load. So this comes under the scalability of user load. Again, coming to seventh requirement, scalability responsiveness. The system response time on the future load for user request as identified in the figure shall be less than 5 seconds for any individual request. Okay, again it comes to again this is the average count of the transaction received by the system by must be equals or more than 150% of the peak time transaction equals to 2178. So this is the transaction rate it should achieve, either this or more than this. CPU utilization must be less than 70% during the stress test, and memory utilization must not exceed more than 14%. It should be less than 14%. Again, coming to limit, suppose you have 500 is the maximum errors it may expect, and availability. So the system must be able to support 75% of the peak time active user load. So maximum, if there are 100% of peak user load, it should support peak 75% of the user all the time. It should be available for all the users, 75% of the users. Availability, responsiveness, the system response time on average load for user request as identified the phase shall be less than 3 seconds for an individual request. Again, transaction rate. So these are the NFRs we need to call. So capacity, responsiveness. Again, whenever we are considering a breakpoint test, the user load must be increased gradually until the system breakpoint is reached. Like will be, as I have shown, and we will also discuss this thing in the when I focus on the particular controller. I will show each and every scenario and design all those to make you understand about this particular process. So the user load must increase gradually until the system breakpoint is reached. Okay, next is capacity responsiveness. So response time must be noted at different user load level. Like what is the response time for the transaction in 50 user load? Simultaneously, we will go on increasing the user load, and we will have to note the particular response time, how it is varying during the change of capacity. So again, capacity transaction. So whenever we are increasing the user capacity, what is the transaction rate it is achieving? CPU utilization at different user load. Check at what point it reaches in to 100%. Like you have to measure like and test in what point it is reaching this 100% user. Again, capacity generic. Note down the error count at different user load. Robustness user load. A sudden spike of 200% of peak user load must be handled by the system. The duration of the spike will be 2 minutes after every 15 minutes. So these are the NFRs we need to achieve during the test. Again, robustness, responsiveness. The response time must be noted at every spike and that must be less than 6 seconds. Again, whenever there is a spike, we must note the particular response time and it should be less than 6 seconds. So these are the particular like NFRs we collect during the test, and I hope you might have understand this particular NFR as well. So these are there are various. So I have dealt with particular. So I made you understand about the particular performance testing requirements, non-functional requirement. So there are different non-functional type tests where also you need to get all those details and document on this particular fashion. So there are security testing requirement, accessibility testing requirement, usability testing requirement, and compatibility testing requirement. So, what are the assumption and risk you have component like the business NFRs are verified by client, BA architecture and project manager. The final NFRs are extracted from business NFRs. The final NFRs are the quantitative NFRs and approved by all the stakeholders. And what are the constraints? Uh, Again, constraints should be documented concerning the available non-functional requirement associated with the performance test. The performance test environment has 50% of the server that production has. So again, what are the constraints? The performance test environment has 50% of the server data that production has. Like suppose they are not utilizing the 100% of the production stack. They are just um, simulating the production like data, 50% of the production like data. The scaling factor of the performance test to production is 50%. Like the user should be scaled up to 50%. The user load and transaction rate NFR are executed in performance test should be run at 50% of the full production load model to represent a 100% load test in the test environment. Risk: if there is any change in the NFR during the performance test cycle, then it may add some delay in the timelines. These are the risks. If we then obviously if they start making some changes and they are asking you to change some of the NFRs during the performance, then obviously we have to make a change and understand that particular thing, and it will also delay the timelines. So action is, what are the mitigation? Redesign the performance test scenario, delay in the performance testing lifecycle. So dependency, any further detail required in the business NFRs should be provided by the project team. Should be provided by the project team. Any further details required in business NFRs should be provided by the project team. Impact is high. Unavailability of the information may add some delay in the timeline. Obviously, if there is some changes or something is lacking in the in the gathering, then obviously this may add some delay in the timeline, project timeline. NFR. And what are the documents you have referred? You have to attach all those documents and link for this particular so that we can see. So I hope like after going through this particular full flex document of the NFR gathering, you might have understood overall topic of this particular thing. So even now let's come to our PowerPoint and discuss, like I'll give an example. Okay, so after having a risk assessment and finalizing the scope of the performance testing, he got the approval from all stakeholder on the risk assessment document. Moving to the next phase, which is non-functional document. What all things he got, like this application should be very fast. The response time of the application should be quick. The web server performance should be high as possible. The application should support many users. The server should not fail when a sudden load comes during any kind of like whether in Flipkart Big Billion Day sale, or when you are considering a global market like big Black Friday sale. So for from a client perspective, he has given all those requirement. He might not be given in-depth requirement which helps you to collect the extreme detail and document it, but he has given a very basic way. So again, you need to understand all those details and project him in a fashion so that he can he can be like he can be agreed with the particular numbers what you have come up with. So again, like from a client view, like you have gone all the got the conceptual requirement. Now information is very partial, it is not in depth detail, so it cannot help you to define the performance testing goal with a polite manner. You have to gain the customer's confidence and convince him to provide the quantitative uh, requirements. Like you have to ask to the project stakeholder and ask some of the basic questions to gather the following requirements. Like suppose how many types of user are using this application. As you have given all the in the previous way, uh, as client told you, like this the thing he needs during the his expectation in the after performing the performance test. Like the application should run very fast, the response time of the application, understand it very clearly, guys. It will help you to help you in this particular process. And like he has given, my application should work very fast and the response time should be quick, and my server resources should be working fine. But client is not giving any kind of number to you, so it will be a very difficult task for you to gather the numbers, come up with some quantitative numbers. So you have to make the client comfortable and ask all the basic question to the stakeholders, project stakeholders, like how many, what are the number, how many types of users are using the particular application in the GUI, like whether like it is a online, let's take Flipkart, like there might be having some admin, there might be seller, some of the end user, and some call center employee. So all those might be using these particular details. Again, what are the business scenario of every users? So for admin, he need to approve or remove a particular seller. He is able to make, he can perform addition and deletion of the existing product. What are the buyers, like end users? Like they can view the product, they can buy the product, they can cancel the product, they can add the cart in the product, they can search the product, everything. This comes under scenario for the particular end user. So what is the AUT, current and predicted peak uh, user load for all its user action over time? So what is the current value and what is the predicted value they are just expecting? Yeah, they have to mention it, like how many number of end users are currently active in the application, and how much they are expecting, and what are the scalability requirements they are performing. So they need to they need to answer in this particular. And even how many call centers are, how many person are working in the call center, and how many are accessing this particular in currently, and what is the predicted value. So what is the average of active user count at a time, like in a single what is the concurrent users like active in the application? So you have to come up with some of the values, and you have to perform that particular thing. So what could be the active user count during the peak hour? In a peak hour, what is the maximum amount a user is loading, peak user load? So what is the spike in the user load in a month or a day or any kind of flash sale? So they have to mention that thing, so that it will help in giving a peak user load and identifying that for the stress test. So what is the TPS request throughput, or also what is the request count received at the admin end, like 200 requests or 500 requests per hour, which is throughput. What would be the response time NFR for all the scenarios? Like what is the client expecting, whether it is a 3-second SLA, under 3-second SLA, or a 5-second SLA, or a 7-second or 10-second, anything. So what would be the server side metrics, like how much the CPU utilize during the load test or stress test or anything? After what should be in the pre, post, and steady memory utilization difference? Must not be like before running the test. What is the ideal particular memory utilization, and after the particular test what is the memory utilization, and what is the difference between the this that, and what is the memory utilization during the steady state? So these all things you need to note, and you have to, and even you have to understand the disk utilization must not be more than 25% or 30% or 50% except the stress test. So, what is the size of performance testing environment with respect to production? So, considering the production size having a high volume, so what is the client needs, and perform the performance testing in the NFR NFT environment. So, what is the volume? What is the maximum volume or capacity it should be, or it will be replicated 100% or 50% of the production volume? We have to come across, we have to document and make that particular strategy as well. So I guess you might have a very good discussion about this NFR gathering, and this might have helped you a lot to understand about the NFR gathering process. And I can definitely make sure if you watch this particular video, and definitely you'll be able to do this particular activity and perform this activity. So we will see other like what all next we'll continue in the next class, like what all details we what is the next phase. And it is coming up very exciting. Like next we'll see test planning. After the test planning we have test design phase. Like we will start performing and building the particular script, and it is a very exciting thing. You'll start developing the script on your own, and I'll help you, and even I'll explain you a very in-depth what is that functions and all. Like in no tutorial they will help you and explain about this particular thing, even the challenges of recording and all, everything I'll tell you. So it is coming up very exciting for the next session. So So, guys, we'll continue with our next topic. So, hope you have a very good knowledge about this particular topic. And uh, okay, thanks for joining this class. Have a great day, man. Bye. So, if you face any kind of doubt, please.